Okay, so I'm turning 32 this year, but 10 days after my 31st birthday, I actually had a heart attack. But I didn't know what was going on, and I laid on the floor for 8 hours, alone. Partly because I thought I just had to take a gigantic shit, I'm not even gonna lie to you. And that was confirmed not the case. I made my way to the hospital, and I got surgeries, everything got a little better. But in that time, in the hospital, the 5 days that I was there, I decided this year I would do anything that I ever thought I wanted to do, because my life is not infinite. Now, I've been watching anime since my earliest memories. To put that into perspective, I remember watching Adult Swim when the advertisements were actually of adults swimming.
Adult Swim. All kids out of the pool.
It was weird, but that was the thing. So putting together the thing that I love and combining the idea that I won't be here for forever, this channel has been one of my biggest ambitions ever. And in the world of Bleach, Ichibei and the Soul King make sacrifices to protect that same type of human ambition. In Bleach, the Soul King is the facilitator of the cycle of death and rebirth. And we learn about this little event called the Original Sin, that he was essentially mutilated to be the lynchpin for this activity. And this is where people get the idea that Ichibei is super evil or some secret top tier hidden villain in Bleach. But that's just not true. Yes, he was a part of the noble families which led the butchering of the Soul King, but the Soul King knew this was coming. He had the Almighty. He's seen the future, the grains of sand. And it's explicitly stated that the Soul King allowed himself to be split apart and essentially used as this giant screw that connects all of the cycle of death and rebirth for every soul. Now when it comes to the Soul King, you have to think like a god, not like a human. Sure, being split apart and encased in a crystal sounds horrific, but would you do it to give life and purpose, more importantly, to all living things possible? We're talking trillions potentially. Now yes, the nobles did split him apart out of fear, but the intention of using him as a linchpin to give every soul a purpose, a reason to live, was not incorrect. And the Soul King for sure knew this. He was an omnipotent being who could have stopped them at any point. If Yuha was able to defeat the Zero Squad without the Almighty fully intact, could you imagine what the Soul King could have done with all of his parts? I used to wonder what the Bankai of the nobles would have had to have been to have been able to win against the Soul King with someone who would have the powers of the miracle and the powers of the Almighty, but you notice they never ever talk about having a battle with the Soul King. He allowed himself to be in this position for the best possible timeline for all of existence. Like I said, them splitting him apart was out of fear, essentially making a king that couldn't fight back if one day felt the need to. But the thing is, the Shinigami are not perfect protectors of the story. They're just doing what they truly believe is beneficial for all of the worlds to coexist and for the flow of souls to actually operate in a healthy manner. Before the Soul King, essentially the worlds were combined into one, where your only point of existence was to try to avoid being devoured by a hollow. When Yhwach is invading, part of him seems to just want to do this to free his father, aka the Soul King, from the humiliation that the Shinigami have subjected him to through the capture and the mutilation of his body. But it doesn't seem like he has a good plan for the future of all living souls outside of them avoiding the cycle of fear and death. He doesn't really propose a better plan for all living things and for the future of all souls. But the problem with that is, if you're never going to die, then what is ambition? What is risk? What is anything? Fear and death inherently add value to life. They encourage hustle, they encourage creativity, because you just will not be here for forever. It's really a simple philosophy. If it can always be done tomorrow, would it ever be done today? That's the whole point of Aizen's speech in the end, when he talks about courage. You don't just live to live and slowly move onward just because. Every day you experience fear, you overcome that fear, you take risk. You risk your ego, your mind, body, and soul on many endeavors. But that's because there's finality, because you know that one day you won't be here anymore. Fear is necessary to take those evolutionary steps. The Shinigami are not the secret villains of Bleach. You're not following a story where secretly you're following the bad guys the whole time and you're low-key rooting for them and you find out in the end. That's not the point. The point is, they're not perfect protectors, but they are the winners of history, and do they get to choose how it's written? Absolutely. They might do some things along the way that morally aren't the greatest, But the intention is there for every soul to have a proper place, even in Hueco Mundo and Hell, and for every person to have a purpose.
This is real.